Let's look at an application that uses an if-else structure in its code. And in this demonstration, I have a text box named txt last name. I've created two radio buttons, which we really haven't looked at yet. One's called RB female and RB male. And if you watch the video on group boxes and panels, you remember that radio buttons are mutually exclusive. So if I select one radio button, it's going to unselect the other. So only one of these two can be selected at a time. And then I have a button here called BTN register. Let's look at the code for that button. First of all, in our BTN register underscore click subprocedure, I am declaring a variable called last name as string, and then I'm setting it equal to the text property of our txt last name text box. Then I'm going to use just a basic if structure. And here I'm looking at the value of last name, and if it is equal to quote quote or a null string, and that's going to occur if there's nothing in that text box, then we're going to show a message box that says you did not enter a last name, please try again. And then I have a line here after that that says exit sub, which will cause this subprocedure to end and the rest of the code would not be executed. So that's just a basic if structure. If something is in txt last name, that code, actually this code, will never run. And it'll jump down to our if-else structure. So here we have a decision structure with two branches. We're evaluating a Boolean expression of RB female, that was our first radio button, dot checked. The checked property is going to determine whether or not that radio button is selected. And if it is, it's going to be true. The property is going to be true. And we're going to show a message box that recognizes they had the female radio button selected. And the message is going to say, nice to see you, Ms., and then whatever the last name is. And the title will be welcome, ma'am. If RB female is not checked, we're going to assume that they're male. And in the else structure, we're going to execute this message box, which is going to say, nice to see you, Mr., where the last name was, and the title will say, welcome, sir. So two different forks that our program can run depending on the value of RB female.checked. Let me go ahead and run this. So first of all, if I have nothing in the last name and I click register, I get a message box that says you did not enter a last name, title, please try again, and the rest of the code is not executed. If we put a name in here, and I have female selected, and click register, it says nice to see you, Miss Smith, and the title says welcome, ma'am. If, however, I click male, the title is going to be welcome, sir, and the prompt is nice to see you, Mr. Smith. So you can see how our code follows one of two paths based on this expression as to whether it evaluates true or false. Now the reality is RB female.checked is a true value or a false value, and I could actually get rid of that equals true because this does equate to either true or false. And we'll see I can run this and I'm going to get the exact same results. So there's the female and there's the male. So in reality, we don't always have to have a Boolean operator in a Boolean expression. In some cases, if it's evaluating a property that is either true or false, or it's a Boolean variable that contains either true or false, we can just put that item in our condition. Here's the same project in C#. Same text boxes, radio buttons, and my register button. Let's just look at the C# code. So for our btn register underscore click procedure, I have a string variable called last name again. We're going to put the text of txt last name into that variable. And then I'm going to check to see if that is a null string, quote, quote. So if last name, remember we have to use two equals for the equal Boolean operator. So if last name equals quote quote, it's going to execute what's between my curly brackets, in which case it's going to show a message box that says you did not enter a last name, please try again. And then because this returns a void data type in our procedure, I can just say return here, and that's basically the equivalent of the exit sub that we saw on the VB side. I'm returning nothing, but that causes this procedure to stop running, and the rest of this code would never be executed. Now, assuming they did enter something into last name, this would be a false condition. This code would not be executed, and would then proceed with my next statement, which is if, and I have another condition here, if rbfemale.checked, again, that's either a true or false value. If it equals true, and again, I'm using the double equal sign, it's going to execute what's between these curly brackets, which is going to be a message box popping up that says, nice to see you, Ms., and the last name, and then the title will be welcome, ma'am. If rbfemale.checked is false, we'll assume that the rbmale button has been checked. It's going to execute what's in the else clause. So between these two curly brackets, we have a message box that says, nice to see you, Mr., and their last name, little concatenation there, and then the title is welcome, sir. I'll go ahead and execute this so you can see it actually does work. So if we have female checked and I choose register, nice to see you, Ms. Smith, welcome, ma'am. And if I choose male, welcome, sir, nice to see you, Mr. Smith. And if I have nothing in there, and I click register, we get a dialog box that says you did not enter a last name, please try again. I click OK, and nothing else happens because it doesn't execute the rest of the code. So it works identical to the VB side. The code's just slightly different. And in both cases, though, we have used an if-else decision structure as well as an if structure.